Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CBT podcast. I'm here with Ethan. I'm here with Rod, and today we are here to once again talk about Kevin Durant and the saga that's just continuing to unfold. So this morning, KD met with the Nets governor, Joe Tsai, and he told him that he has to choose between him and the pair of Steve Nash, the head coach, and Sean Marks, the GM. Later in the day, Tsai ended up tweeting that, quote, "Our front office and coaching staff have my support. We will make decisions in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets." So the way I see it, if I was Joe Tsai, by this time, Steve Nash, Sean Marks, they'd be living under a bridge in a cardboard box somewhere in the Brooklyn, the depths of Brooklyn, never to be seen or heard from again. Because when you have a player like Kevin Durant, a top 3 player in the league, maybe the most talented offensive player ever, you do everything in your power to keep him on the team.
Yeah, I feel so bad for the Nets. I had a whole spiel what I wanted to say. I had all my notes ready, and then the tweet came out, which completely threw everything off. But I will break this down, but I want to give an analogy first. Ethan, I'm gonna require some participation here. All right, Ethan. So you're walking down the street, right? Bright sunny day, and there's 2 alleys on either side of you, right? You look to your left. On this alley, you see a box, brand new rose gold Rolex, still in the box, all shiny. And then you look over to your right and you see a crackhead who just pissed on himself for the 4th time that day. Which alley are you going to walk down?
I could use a nice little Rolex.
Well, Joe Tsai just is kicking it with the bumbling pissy crackhead right now that is Steve Nash. I am completely shocked. First of all, we all agree that Steve Nash is the worst coach in the NBA, right?
I think that's the safe thing to say, yeah.
It's not even close. I mean, he's incompetent. So he should have been fired regardless of where KD was going. And then Ethan sent me a little article. I'm not even sure if it's real, that KD didn't even want Steve Nash at first, which just makes this whole situation even funnier.
No, it was credit to JJ. Sorry.
So JJ sent it to Ethan, Ethan sent it to me. But so this whole time that KD and Kyrie have been in Brooklyn, Steve Nash has kind of just been tagging along, holding them back, being awful. And now we've come to the ultimatum that KD proposed to Joe Tsai, and this is only because KD has not been traded yet. I guarantee you KD thought he would be on another team by now. So he had to approach the Nets and Joe Tsai, and he told them, you can either choose me or Steve Nash and Sean Marks. JJ already said it. I would have had them on the side of the road by now. By the time I would have tweeted, it would have been a thank you to Sean Marks and Steve Nash for everything they've done for the Nets franchise. This is absolutely hilarious. It's a comedy show in Brooklyn. Ethan, what do you think about it?
I just don't understand what's going on with Steve Nash. Steve Nash should have been fired midway through the season. Shouldn't even have been hired in the first place. I don't know why he has a coaching position in the NBA. It's just preposterous to me. But now you really got to be thinking like what's going to happen with KD. I think he has to be gone at this point. I think now they just have to take whatever they can get, like the highest bidder at this point. And then also when you look at it, there was also a lot of reports about Kyrie and Steve Nash having a lot of issues. So I don't know if maybe KD had issues with Steve Nash as well, just under the rug. Just, it wasn't reported as much as Kyrie, but it's definitely something to be looking into. But also, wasn't Steve Nash part of the coaching staff in the Golden State Warriors when KD was there?
He was in the organization.
Assistant or something. Yeah.
I think he was there. So it's like, why would all of a sudden he have issues with Steve Nash?
He's ass.
I mean,
I don't know if it's all of a sudden. I know for a fact, I think it was Mike James, who currently is playing overseas. He was saying that he was talking to KD right before the playoffs started. And KD was like, he said before the playoffs are going to start, he was like, hey, I'm going to come watch you in the playoffs because we're about to get bounced in the first round. So I think one of the biggest problem with the Brooklyn Nets is Kevin Durant has no faith in the franchise whatsoever. And that was made evident today when he's saying Steve Nash has to go. Obviously, being a Celtics fan, I watched every game of that Celtics-Nets series. And the Brooklyn Nets played the same exact way in all 4 games and it ended up losing all 4 games to no one's surprise. Steve Nash failed to adjust. His entire system is give the ball to KD, let him dribble, let him isolate. Give the ball to Kyrie now, let him dribble, let him isolate. And that's just not good enough to win a championship anymore. So I kind of feel for KD in this situation. He deserves better, much better than Steve Nash. But I don't know if this was the best way to actually go about getting that coaching change and have it on such a public level.
Yeah, I think regardless of what Joe Tsai chooses, this was a brilliant move by Kevin Durant because he just accelerated whatever option Joe Tsai opts with. It's either this now encourages him to get KD out of Brooklyn and put this whole situation behind him, which is what KD originally wanted, or if he does choose to keep KD, KD can now go back to Brooklyn without the burden of Steve Nash. And now the guy I want to talk about, Sean Marks. Whenever I see big news break or something happen, I go to the fan pages of those teams. So I went to the Nets fan pages, and all of the fans were in clear support of please get rid of Steve Nash. They wanted him gone months ago. But it was really split on Sean Marks because if you remember, he was there. He was the guy who built the Nets back in, the refugee camp that was the Nets after the massive Paul Pierce KG trade. They were left with no picks. The D'Angelo Russell, LeVert, Jared Allen days, those were Sean Marks building the team from nothing. So there is a bit of sentiment there, but I do think he has a lot of blame to be placed on him because the James Harden trade was a failure. They got rid of Jared Allen, they got rid of Karis LeVert, and what do they have to show for it now? Ben Simmons. I mean, come on. And then he's given too much power to KD and Kyrie, and now it's coming back to bite him. So if I'm Joe Tsai, I think it's pretty clear. I think we all would opt with KD. But even if you do, you hire a new GM, you hire a new coach, and what if KD is just feeling unhappy in another year? Then what do you start over? At what point, I'm saying, is it too much? What point does a player have too much power over a franchise?
I actually have a lot of respect for Sean Marks because he basically took a franchise that was covered in shit and a bunch of turds and just turned it into something respectable. Like when D'Lo was there,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is a respectable franchise now. Like they're not, the Celtics kind of stabbed them. Then when they were on the floor, stabbed them again. And then when they were on the
22
floor,
times.
yeah, it was crazy. So it was like, I was actually proud of them for turning something into like out of nothing into something, like or however it goes. But I think also another thing that the league is having an issue with is its superstars.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also reflected, with James Harden getting pushing himself out of Houston. And then also with the Lakers. I feel like there's a lot of GMs now that are struggling with the power system between, like how much they can do and then having a superstar like KD or LeBron, having all that power. I think it's becoming a struggle for GMs to really balance that type of like what they can really do when you have a superstar of that magnitude. And I think one superstar that you never hear about like this, besides when he pushed himself out of the Spurs, was Kawhi. I mean, since Kawhi has been in the Clippers, you haven't really heard much from him. I feel like they've done well with keeping their control over the team, yet kind of having that influence of Kawhi and Paul George. And I feel like that's what other teams should really look at and try to copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously Kawhi's recent franchises have kept him happier, but that Spurs breakup was awfully messy, and there was a lot of bad things that came out about that. But back to the Nets. If I'm Joe Tsai and I'm talking to KD, I want to see if there's a way where he would accept just getting rid of Steve Nash and not Sean Marks. Sean Marks, like we were just saying, has a proven track record as a good GM in the NBA. The Nets had the knife in their neck, right in their artery. They're bleeding out. And I don't know how Sean Marks did it, but he pulled it out, bandaged it up, and they were ready to go. Unlike Steve Nash, who has no track record as a successful head coach. The best he's ever done was make it to the second round against Milwaukee, where they eventually came up short thanks to KD's size 28 feet. And I never thought I'd say this, but at this point in time, I feel like out of the Nets' big three, Ben Simmons is the most stable out of all three of them. I think he's the happiest with the organization, which is just ludicrous to say. But let's talk about the teams that KD could still be traded to. came out today that there are 3 teams left in the race: the Boston Celtics, the Toronto Raptors, and the Miami Heat. Rod, out of those 3 destinations, which do you think is the most likely landing spot for KD?
Yeah, after the Joe Tsai tweet, I feel like it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to trade KD now just out of spite. We don't think he should, but I think it's going to happen. And out of those 3 teams, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think they can get Bam Adebayo from the Heat unless there's a third team involved, or it just can't happen at all. So that's off. The Heat are off the table, in my opinion, because I think the Raptors and the Celtics can both offer the Nets multiple players that are better than anything the Heat could offer without Bam. So if we're going to look at the Celtics, obviously Jaylen Brown was already on the table. I think it's still on the table if the Nets come back. I think he is better than either of the players the Raptors are willing to offer. And for the Raptors, I have seen basically Gary Trent and OG Anunoby. If I was the Nets, I would probably take the Raptors offer because I feel like Jaylen Brown is a better player than either of them. But I think combined, Gary Trent and OG, I mean, they're your starting wings for the next 6 to 7 years.
They'd also be getting Derek White in the trade, though.
From the Celtics, I mean.
Yeah.
It's Derek White.
Hey, Derek White was a big-time performer for the Celtics late in the playoffs. To put some respect on his name.
They also have Seth Curry and Joe Harris, though. So if I'm the Nets, I'm thinking about young starters that I can have for years and years. And I basically think the Celtics can offer them 1, unless they throw in Robert Williams for some reason, which would be wild. And I think the Raptors can offer them 2. I think they'd both be willing to give up multiple draft picks. So I think those are the 2 teams that are really in contention, ironically, for this podcast.
It's our 2 favorite teams, obviously, but I think Jaylen Brown carries so much more value and weight than OG and Gary Trent that it'd be worth it for the Nets, even if they get that secondary piece of Derek White and a first-round pick. So as much as I hate to say it, if there was any team that KD would end up on, I do think it would be the Celtics, although I do not think the Celtics should pursue a trade because, as we discussed in a previous episode, they would be much better off just sticking what they have and letting the team develop as is.
No, definitely. I feel like you and I talked about this, JJ. I think the only way that it makes sense for the Celtics to do this trade and put in Jaylen Brown or whatever they need to is if they know that Jaylen Brown is not going to re-sign next offseason. I think it's next offseason he has the extension, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it is. So I think that's the only way that you can really say, hey, I think it's time to move on from him. Other than that, we've talked about it. There's not really a reason to get rid of Jaylen Brown at this point. You know, Celtics fans, we love him. Like the city loves him. The organization loves him. Like, I feel like there's just no way that the Celtics should be getting rid of him. I think me as a fan, I would prefer the Raptors to take him. I think they have more pieces that they can offer that are more expendable than Jaylen Brown. I also think that they can give more picks than we can because we've already given a pick for
Brogdon and Derek White, but that draft has already happened. Kind of a funny situation as neither of us want KD to come to our team, which is obviously strange, but I think that's going to do it for us in today's video. I'm going to ask that you please drop a like, comment, subscribe. Where do you think KD's going to end up? What do you think Joe Tsai should do? Should the Nets wait a year and trade KD for Victor Wembanyama? Who knows? Thank you guys once again for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.